Everything's changing in PR these days, so now what? There's a flood of generic AI generated content in healthcare and health tech marketing. How can you differentiate your messaging from the rest of the noise? In an industry built on trust, where the stakes are people's health, generic, interchangeable messaging isn't just forgettable, it's a liability. Today, we're discussing how authentic stories build true health tech thought leadership.
Hey, James. Looking forward to our conversation today on healthcare and what we're seeing out there as far as content goes and AI and what folks are lovingly referring to as AI slop these days. So, looking forward to this conversation because I think there's lots that we can cover based on some of our experience with our clients and also what we're seeing today. I was thinking about it, and we're definitely not facing a content shortage anymore, right? There's so much out there. But I think now we have a credibility shortage. And since healthcare has always been built on trust, AI just makes trust easier to fake and harder to earn.
Yeah, that is very well said. That's a great line. Yeah, I saw something the other day on LinkedIn, ironically enough, where it was saying that everybody is a thought leader or has the ability to be a thought leader now, right? Which isn't entirely a new concept, but now everybody like just thinks they're a thought leader and thinks that their ideas are, all amazing and groundbreaking. And it's hard to kind of sift through the mountain of stuff out there, right? To figure out like who's actually worth listening to, who has something real to say. I think we've all, even people outside of communications, we're all learning how to better spot, slop or something that's AI created. But there's just so much of it out there, right? Like you still have to sift through a bunch of stuff to find what the real golden nuggets are. So yeah, it's a real problem for sure. We're talking about it within the healthcare lens today, but it really applies across all industries. We're just especially seeing it in healthcare, like we said, in an industry that is uniquely grounded in real world, real people's health, real people's data is, at stake or at the middle of this, right? So particularly important. It's a particularly important issue here.
Yeah, and healthcare, health tech is particularly nuanced because there's so much that they deal with from a compliance perspective and in what they can say and what they can't say. And I was thinking about thought leadership in general, and I was like, well, it really starts with leadership. You really have to have an opinion before we lean into the thought, right? So who are you? What are you standing for? And how is that coming across? And I know we worked with a particular client. They were a healthcare consulting firm, and our spokesperson there was very passionate about women's health. And at that time, we weren't hearing a lot about menopause. That story wasn't being covered so much. And she came in, and we sat down with her, and we really defined her voice and her vision and her hopes for the future of women's healthcare. And through the course of that relationship, was able to build up who she was in the space and really make her a true thought leader in women's healthcare.
Yeah, I think figuring out what your voice when you're setting out to, generate content, even if your goal is not necessarily to be, quote, thought leader, right? But you want to, as your organization wants to be seen having a point of view on stuff. The most important thing is really drilling down into what is it that you believe? What is it that you really truly feel, right? That you can have a strong defensible point of view on, that ideally nobody else in your industry has that point of view. If you can bring something kind of new and interesting to the conversation, that's gold, right? But it takes a lot of work to figure out what is that point of view? What do we believe in? What do we stand for when, you're facing the demand to just churn out as much content as possible, right? To feed the AI machines and, LLMs. There's a real careful balance that you have to strike, right? Between being out there and seen and consistent, but making sure that you're not just churning out content for the sake of churning it out, right?
Yeah.
And so that example that you just highlighted is a really good kind of sneak peek into our process, right? Really, before you even do anything, spend the time to really figure it out what it is you want to say. And it seems self-explanatory, but so many founders and so many companies just want to run, right? And they don't want to necessarily stop and put the time in to make sure that foundation is in place.
Yeah, I agree. And so often they want to lead with product instead of a point of view. And I think the work that we did with Tina, building that foundation on a point of view and securing byline placement in, important industry publications, I believe Med City News, Chief Healthcare Executive, Healthcare Dive, and even building a relationship with Forrester and having her quoted in those analyst reports was really important to securing the speaking engagements that came after, such as Vive, Health, and HIMSS. So I think that foundational build first was really important with Tina, and that success with her speaking opportunity and really becoming that voice was instrumental.
Yeah. So I think in healthcare too, what's really a particularly unique challenge, right, is because the technology that is used by healthcare systems is so entrenched, right, that it's hard for a technology company trying to break in to really strike that right kind of chord. Again, you're trying to find the balance between like talking about how your technology is going to come help make their lives easier, right? But you can't overpromise because then these health systems won't take you seriously. They'll just say like that's just going to disrupt our existing workflows, right? So there's thought leaders and executives at these technology companies that are making technology for health systems really need to think about what is it that I can say, or what kind of content can I develop that helps these would-be customers understand the value I'm bringing, but like we're also not going to disrupt your world and make your life more difficult, right? And a lot of the proof of that comes with what you're able to actually do. Do you have results that you can share? One of our clients was instrumental in building one of the first data registries during the COVID-19 pandemic. And they got it up and running in 6 days or something. And it was a great product achievement, but how they took that product achievement and created tons of content out of it. It became a media relations opportunity as well. But that really allowed them to kind of, double and triple down on that and create a number of cycles of content that, still echo like to this day, right? They still talk about that, years later. And it's really helped level up the company in terms of visibility, but establish the CEO and other executives there as real thought leaders. And so it's a good example of like you have to be able to not just say what it is you're going to do, you have to be able to back it up too. And not everybody can do that, especially when you're breaking into an industry that's kind of like reticent to accept what you're selling.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think that was a great example. I believe we grew their share of voice 55% year over year, that based on that initial build and the success of what they did during COVID-19. As you were talking, I thought, yeah, if you can take what you're producing and your competitor can plop their logo on it and it would be the same. That's what we see a lot. And that's what we see a lot with AI. When you create content with AI, it's a good tool. It's a good, way to get something started. But that's not the end of it because it leans safe and it's something that any of your competitors could just like plop their logo on and it's the same thing. So to really differentiate yourself as a company, as a thought leader, what are you going to say that's different than your competitors saying? How are you bringing a unique or even contrarian viewpoint to the market? Because clearly you have subject matter experts within the company with strong points of view on these different topics that are really important in health tech right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in addition to what is it that you're going to say that's different and that makes people care, are you passionate, like, and can other people tell that you care deeply about that topic, right? We have a healthcare client right now. CEO is not a healthcare native by any means. He's kind of more of a serial CEO, but he's passionate about fixing a very unique problem within healthcare, right? And has identified some market inefficiency in the way that information is exchanged within health systems. And he's like, that doesn't have to be that way. And he really cares about fixing this one little thing, right? But it has big repercussions throughout health systems if they get that fixed or make that a little bit more efficient, right? So it doesn't even need to be this like mind-blowing, groundbreaking, point of view. If you care about one little thing really, really deeply, and that shows up consistently in everything that you say and produce, that's enough to like convince the market and help demonstrate, that you've got a real interest in solving that problem and that you're well equipped to do it.
Exactly. And then how is that content that you're creating, those byline articles that you are writing and placing, how is it helping the decision-making process, right? Because that's really what matters. So is that particular article in Med City News useful to your sales team to help one of your prospects make a decision? Are you utilizing that placement in a way that helps you secure that next speaking opportunity? or the first speaking opportunity. You have startups trying to make a place in the world, and you have established companies that still, struggle to get that speaking spot at HIMSS, or, secure that spot in an analyst report. How are you pushing that there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, we started this conversation talking about how there's so much like obvious AI generated kind of slop out there, right? And we've switched into talking about, real examples of real world work that AI had very little to do with. It's not to say like AI can't be useful in developing, content, but again, like using it judiciously, right? Maybe for like outlining something, but you can't use it to write every blog post or every LinkedIn post, right? Because that stuff, when you do that and it becomes a pattern, and again, people are getting better and better at identifying what's AI generated, right? Over reliance on that AI stuff starts to erode the real credibility that we've just been talking about, that some of our clients have been able to build, by doubling down into kind of, what's real and what's authentic. And so again, like this isn't groundbreaking either, but AI, it's not a silver bullet, right? It's a tool that can help you organize your thoughts and maybe, acid test an idea. But again, over relying on it is where you're going to get into trouble, and you don't want to erode all the credibility that you work so hard to build, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you made a good point about folks being able to recognize AI content. I was on LinkedIn yesterday and going through a thought leader, someone in the health tech space that I've really valued their opinion for quite a while, but I started noticing they were posting infographics that were clearly AI generated, which is not that in itself is not a problem, but it didn't seem edited after that. So it was text heavy. I looked at it and I was like, eh. And I imagine consumers and prospects are doing the same thing. We are starting to recognize what is AI. Your prospects understand what is AI versus true authentic, point of view or content. And I think that marketers need to recognize that. You can't just take what AI spits out and, okay, post it, we're done. You have to have that critical interpretation in place. You have to bring that designer eye sometimes in place when it has, when you're posting a graphic or, an image or an infographic type thing. So I think that consumers, prospects are starting to recognize it. And we as marketers, like, it's been fun. It's been quick. We can push stuff out, faster than we did before, but we need to pause and we need to take it back and bring what our expertise to the table. And that's where the true value is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it really boils down to a quality versus quantity thing, right? And AI has made it really possible for all of us collectively to kind of lose sight of that, right? There's a real temptation to, because it's so easy to generate content through AI, right? There's a real temptation to just over rely on that, and you kind of lose that governor about, is this really good? Is this worth putting out there? I think we're seeing too many people kind of lose sight of, I got to be omnipresent all the time, right? I got to have my LinkedIn post or my LinkedIn feed just, constantly putting out new stuff. I've got to do 2 blog posts a day or 3 blog posts a day. I've got to send it, a million customer emails every day, right? I think everybody just, like you said, needs to just like take a breath and really ask themselves with each piece of content that they produce and are getting ready to send out, is this worth it? Is this highlighting the right messages that I need to signal to my audiences? Or is this just something I'm doing because I think I need to be doing it, right? And again, like, quality is always going to be more important. Fewer but better, moments of communication are going to help stand out when there's just kind of a drone of, generic content, right? People want what's real. People want to find what's authentic. I think a lot of times audiences crave that, and the people that are putting out the content don't necessarily remember that, right? They're just like, we got to feed the machine. So I think you're spot on there. People are losing sight of like what makes for good quality content.
I think that's a tension that we're now seeing across marketing in general that might not have been there a couple years ago, because we do have the ability to push things out faster. So you have a go-to-market team or a lead gen team that's like more, because we want leads. And that creates a tension, because on the flip, you're pushing out AI slop.
Yeah.
We have an audience that can recognize that and is becoming, deaf to it. So I think that's, like we were saying earlier, making sure we're coming in as communication leaders and setting the tone across that marketing team of the point of view we're trying to get across, the messages we want to see in everything, and the quality of content that we're putting out there. I think we need to bring that back, you know.
Yeah.
Good design, good messages. We really need to bring our expertise into that as marketers and communicators.
Yep, absolutely. And and again, like when you generate a really good piece of content that, checks all the boxes that we've been talking about, right? That says something real, says something that's meaningful, ideally something that's differentiated from competitors. When you have a piece of content like that that kind of, meets all those marks, it doesn't just end as soon as you publish it somewhere, right? Or send it out in an email. It should go through the whole cycle, right? Like it should fuel further thought leadership articles or maybe speaking topics at a conference, right? Or it should become a social media post, right? That one thing doesn't necessarily just stop there. If you got a good piece of content, use it multiple times and kind of create that feedback loop where you're again where you want to replicate and be consistent about your messaging across all your channels where all your audiences are, right? So instead of trying to just come up with a million different angles on something, find out what really resonates with your audiences and use it over and over, right? And don't be afraid to keep going back to that well. It's how people get to it's how your audiences get to better understand who it is you are as a company and what you stand for.
Yep. You got me thinking about the good old content calendar while you were saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And, I think that campaign, when you look at the quarter ahead, what are we going to talk about? What's timely right now? And bringing that structure, of course it changes. We know it's fluid, but applying that structure to a quarter, to a year, I think sometimes in communications it's easier to look at it like as 2 quarters because we know things shift throughout the year, especially when in health tech right now everything's moving so fast. But just reminding teams too, like what are we leaning into? What's really important? What are we and using AI sometimes for that analysis is great.
Yeah.
Using AI to look at what's been talked about the last 3 months and then helping that drive your content calendar for the next quarter and applying that structure to help your team. So we want to be at HIMSS. What we want to talk about this, like 6 months before that, start putting that content out there along the lines of that, and, really bringing the strategy to the table that sometimes I'm not seeing right now.
Yeah, 100%. We're doing that right now with one of our clients. We're trying to figure out, what do you want to speak at HIMSS, in however many months it is from now, right? And what can we be doing in the time leading up to that, right? To kind of prime, what it is you want to talk about. How can we start building that foundation in the months to come? So yeah, you're spot on about that.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of bringing on an agency, right? Because we have another client I'm working with right now, same thing. You come in and you see great stuff, but it's all over the place. And the teams aren't speaking to each other, even if it's like development team. And so I think sometimes an agency could come in, take a step back. Okay, we see all the parts. We see where the subject matter experts are. We have analyzed what happened the last 3 months, 6 months, the past year, and we can bring that structure to the table, bring that counsel to our clients. Like, okay, here's what's being said. Here's what you guys should talk about. And, here's the plan. Here's the structure for months. And let's work towards that. I think that's, working on that right now with another client because we just see a bit of messaging chaos and trying and bringing that structure to the table is one reason you'd bring on a PR agency.
Yeah. So AI slop is a problem, kind of across all industries, but doing our best to eliminate it and talk about what's real is especially important in healthcare because this is an already very complex industry. This is real people's lives and health, kind of at the middle of this. There's already a lot going on in this industry. And so the more that we can kind of eliminate the stuff that's not really worth our time, the more we can eliminate content that doesn't really say anything important or interesting, the better, because we need to help people that have real solutions to these real kind of existential problems. We need to help them find each other, right? And that's done through authentic content that means something. At Sterling, we always like to say, stand up, stand out, stand for something. Standing for something is critically important in healthcare because it's you and me. It's real people, at the middle of this, right?
I definitely agree with you. I mean, this applies to all our clients. We have clients in nonprofit, we have clients in battery tech doing really cool things in space, but healthcare is mission critical. It's close to home because I have a daughter with a rare autoimmune disease. And so I love working with our health tech clients. I love working with the ones that are advancing the things that could help her, from a personal perspective. But I think across our country, health tech is so important in our rural communities, and just the technology that exists that can bring innovative healthcare to folks that don't have access to it is mission critical. So the work that we do with our health tech clients is really close to our heart.